All right, good morning, everyone. My name is LaLona Richards, and I have been an education consultant with Purpose-Built Schools for a few years now, and currently I am overseeing the ELA curriculum for grades 6 through 12. But I do have a writing strategy toolkit that I have shared over the years for grades 3 through 12. And within that is something called TEEEEC for informative and persuasive writing, and SLED for narrative writing. So today I'm going to share with you the TEEEC strategy. And of course, this is scaffolded all the way from 3rd grade through 12th grade. And it's great if we can have this within our organization, because then we have a common language. The kids are building upon it each year, and we can be more successful with something that's pretty difficult to tackle, like writing. So why TEEEC? First of all, it keeps you organized. You might say, hey, doesn't any writing strategy keep you organized? Well, they do to a certain degree. But I feel that TEEEC keeps kids exceptionally organized, and it takes a process like writing that's otherwise so ambiguous to kids and sometimes far-reaching, and it makes it concrete and manageable. TEEEC is a step-by-step process for everything you need to do, at first to make a paragraph solid and then to make an essay solid. And I don't mean just simply, okay, topic sentence, evidence explanation, concluding sentence. I mean that within that structure, TEEEC also provides step-by-step what to do for each part. For example, it tells you how specifically to write a topic sentence, and then how specifically to link your explanation to your evidence, and so forth and so on. And once kids practice this and they get to know it, it really does make writing so much easier and less scary for some kids. And it gives you a recipe for the best score on the milestones when we're keeping it real. On the milestones, they literally have a checklist. Did the kid do this, 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 and this? Each thing on that checklist is part of the TEEEC rubric. So once kids get in the habit of writing the TEEEC way, that means they're getting in the habit of covering everything necessary on that milestones rubric. Then I have a little TEEEC chant. I do several little things throughout the program that kind of make it fun, and kids enjoy that. And so I will teach that to you in case it fits your personality and you want to bring it into the classroom as well. So this is a generic TEEEC organizer, and I use this right from the beginning, and I'll need you to bear with me for a moment because we're going to stay on this slide for a little while so I can explain it to you. This is not rocket science. A lot of this is similar to other strategies you may have used, like RACE or otherwise. However, it is going to give you a way to generate more ideas and more information from the students. So let's look first up at the topic sentence. You'll notice it has topic and then 2 ideas. That's how I teach topic sentence. I say the question, let's say the question was, what is the best restaurant in Atlanta? And the kid's answer was Olive Garden. So the topic would be Olive Garden, or more specifically, Olive Garden is the best restaurant. Then you have to give me 2 ideas you have for why Olive Garden is such a good restaurant. So for our example today, we're going to say it's a good restaurant because it has many different choices on the menu and because it gives unlimited breadsticks. So then if you look on the side, you'll see in the far left column, evidence number 1, explanation number 1. Evidence number 2, explanation number 2. So I tell the students evidence and explanation number 1 directly connects to idea number 1. Evidence and explanation number 2 directly attaches to idea number 2. In other words, writing is no longer so daunting. I only have to come up with 1 piece of evidence to support my first idea and explain it, and 1 piece of evidence to support my second idea and explain it. Then I come down to the concluding sentence, where I teach children only 3 strategies for a conclusion. And then as they master those, we talk about more. And we'll get into that more specifically in a moment. But you might say, okay, I can do the Olive Garden thing, but what happens when they connect it to actual text like the milestones? Well, we can't jump there right away. And if you jump there right away, it'll come back to bite you later. My suggestion is you start out practicing this with several examples that are meant to be very simple, connected to what's already in their heads, and not connected to text at all. Because I believe very strongly in separating the process from the content. So the content would be the text they're reading, the process would be TEEEC. So after you have practiced TEEEC, just the process, so many times that the kids feel really confident with it, then you start to apply it to text. You don't apply it to your classroom novel or your classroom text or any milestones related text right off the bat. You bridge the gap by applying it to very simple, highly engaging text, which I'm going to show you a folder in a moment that contains all of this information for you. It contains practice prompts for the very beginning. It contains very simple, highly engaging, short articles to bridge the gap, and then you transition into using text within your content area. Okay, so back to our Olive Garden example. Evidence number one, you'll notice I have some sentence starters there. I have the children use those at the beginning. Again, once they've mastered this process and they want to use different, more advanced sentence starters, fantastic. So in our situation, our first idea was that I liked Olive Garden because it had lots of choices on the menu. So evidence number one might be, when I went to Olive Garden last week, there was lasagna, baked ziti, build your own pasta, pizza, and every kind of Italian food I could imagine. That's evidence there that there was lots of opportunities to choose whatever I wanted from the menu, right? So my evidence is I was there last week, and on the menu, there were all these different types of pasta that I just named. Now, what's my explanation gonna be? Well, the whole point of the explanation is to explain why that evidence proves my topic sentence or supports my topic sentence. That's what I'm explaining, okay? Well, you can't say this shows why Olive Garden is a good restaurant, because you're not bridging the gap there. The whole point of this next sentence is to bridge the gap between the evidence and the topic sentence. So I tell students, ask yourself, so what? What does that mean? So what that there was lasagna, baked ziti, choose your own pasta, and pizza? So what? Why does that matter? Well, I might say something like this. This shows that no matter what your favorite Italian dish is, you could find it at Olive Garden and have a very nice dinner. Something like that shows why it's significant, why it's important that Olive Garden has so many choices. Okay, let's move on to evidence number two. Well, I got to shift now to idea number two. I'm not going to give any more evidence about Olive Garden's vast menu. I'm going to move to something else. So I go back and I say, okay, what did I put for idea number two? I put, it gives you unlimited breadsticks. So my evidence for that will be, during our visit, they brought out basket after basket of breadsticks without charging us any additional money. There's my evidence. My explanation. This is important because even my older brother, who's a football player and eats a lot, left Olive Garden very full. Okay, I've shown you why that evidence was important and how it related back to my topic sentence. Now, concluding sentence. I give them three choices: challenge the reader, use a question, or return to your strongest point. Here I might say, so go out and visit Olive Garden today. If I wanted to be even more specific, I could say, so take your entire family to Olive Garden today and enjoy a fantastic meal. These are different ways we could do concluding sentences. Now, I breezed through that, raced through that with you because you're grown adults who can follow things very quickly. I'm going to show you a map in a moment that takes the kids through every step of that. It's a 10-day plan. Day one, the only thing you talk about is topic sentence. You take 4 or 5 different topics and you write a topic sentence. The next day, you add evidence. That's all you do, is you add evidence. The next day, you just add explanation, and so forth and so on. Okay, so that's the quick overview of it all. We're going to now break it down to this. What do you first do when you are taking a prompt? And then what do you do about that topic sentence? Because the topic sentence is the absolute main thing, of course, and then a few other gems along the way. Now, before you TEEEEC, what must you do? You read the question and you say, what is the question asking me to do, and how is it asking me to do it? And I literally chant that with the kids, so it's stuck in their heads. I say, what is the question asking me to do, and how is it asking me to do it? What is the question asking me to do, and how is it asking me to do it? And then all throughout the whole school year, anytime there's a prompt, we kind of chant that. What is the question asking me to do, and how is it asking me to do it? And then I say, what else is important? Sometimes nothing, but that's a kind of a catch-all for anything that didn't fall under one of those two questions. So let's give it a try here with this example prompt. And by the way, Any prompt that I mentioned today and any passage that I reference will be in the writing folder that I'm going to send to you with a link. Explain the theme of the piano. Use details from the story to support your answer. Write your answer on the lines of your answer document. So what is the question asking me to do? So pause the video right now and see if you can answer that. Now, how is it asking me to do it? In other words, how is it asking you to accomplish the task? Did it give you any specific instructions to include in your answer? And then what else is important? Is there anything else that we haven't captured yet from the prompt? As you can see, the real focus here is dissect the prompt. I've seen so many cases of incredibly talented writers who score really low because they just missed a piece of the prompt. They answered part of it. They misunderstood it. They didn't know what they were really being asked to do. So this helps avoid that situation. Okay, so here's an example of what you might have said. What's the question asking me to do? Explain the theme of the story. We probably all had the same answer there. How is it asking me to do it? Well, it's asking you to use details from the story to support the theme that you came up with. What else is important? Well, it told me to write the answer on the lines in the answer document. Okay, let's try another one. The authors of The Gift of Giving and Receiving is Fun discuss gift giving and receiving. How are the points they discuss similar? Use details from both passages to support your answer. So what is the question asking me to do? How is it asking me to do it? And what else is important? Take a moment to turn to a partner and tell them what you think you would write there. Here are some sample answers. What's it asking me to do? Tell how the points of the articles are similar. Okay. How is it asking me to do it? Use details from both passages. What else is important? I don't really see anything that else is important. This is important to show the kids because you don't always have something for that last question. Third time's the charm. In the passage From the City to the Trail, how does the setting distract the narrator from her mosquito bites? Use details from the story to support your answer. Now, this one's a tricky one. This is one I've seen kids mess up before because notice that it's asking something very specific. Okay, it's not just asking you to talk about this passage, and you don't have this passage in front of you right now, but this is a rather long passage, and the part about the mosquito bites is actually really short. So if students are including all kinds of information from elsewhere in the passage, then they're not doing what the question's asked them to do. The question has asked them to zero in on the mosquito bites. So what is the question asking me to do? Explain how the setting distracts the narrator from her mosquito bites. Those two words have to be in my answer. I have to talk about the setting and I have to talk about the mosquito bites. How is it asking me to do it? Use details from the story to support my answer. What else is important? This is kind of a self-reflection moment when it comes to this one. I'm reminding myself that I can't get distracted by the other parts of the story. I need to stay focused on the part where the mosquitoes are mentioned. Okay, so now that we've got that, the next step is to simply answer the question in one sentence with a blank for our ideas. This will be part of course, the topic sentence. You might say, well, how can I write my topic sentence because I haven't even read the passage yet? Well, you're not writing the topic sentence. You're just establishing your purpose for reading. So something like this. Explain the theme of the piano. We might say, the theme of the piano is blank. We've established that that's how we're going to start our answer. We don't know what else we're going to say because we haven't read it yet, but we know that we have a purpose to write, or a purpose to read, I'm sorry. Now, look at this one. The authors of The Gift of Giving and Receiving is Fun discuss gift giving and receiving. How are the points they discuss similar? Take a moment to figure out how you might start that sentence for the topic sentence. You might have said something like this. The authors of The Gift of Giving and Receiving is Fun both discuss the point that, and then we have to wait and see what that is. Lastly, how about this one? You might have said, the setting distracts the narrator from her mosquito bites by blank. Now, if your kids are familiar with race, then this is similar to how race starts. It becomes different after this once we establish our two ideas. But this idea of kind of restating the question is important to help them have the purpose that they need to write. Next, we read with purpose, keeping in mind what we're looking for. We're looking for two ideas. And we need to highlight or underline as we read evidence that might support those two ideas. So if I'm looking for the theme, as I start to understand the theme, I might start to underline things that I might choose to use. Okay, let's talk about that topic sentence for a moment. Like I said, I suggest two ideas because this helps us organize our papers so easily. If the question says, how did the character change throughout the story? You might answer that by saying, the character began shy, but was very outgoing by the end of the story. Well, one piece of evidence tells me how she was shy and explains it. The other piece of evidence tells me how she became outgoing and explains it. If the question is, how are the passages similar? Then I say how they're similar, and then I give a piece of evidence from one passage that shows how they're similar, and then a piece of evidence from the other passage that shows how they're similar. This really makes it, I would say, manageable and chunks the writing for the kids. However, actually, before I go to however, let's talk about how to do that. All right, so now we're going to get into some more pre-planning and brainstorming. And to be honest, I think this is the weakest area right now in most of our modern writing classrooms. Most likely when you were in school, because at least when I was in school, brainstorming for writing was a big deal. You spent a lot of time brainstorming. But now that we've become such a test-centered school environment, a lot of times we gloss over this in an effort to get the words down on paper. As a result, I feel like the writing has become much weaker. Now, I believe the two most important stages of the writing process are brainstorming or pre-writing and revising. I think if you do those two right, your paper is going to be awesome. And if you don't do those two right, your paper is never going to live up to its fullest potential. So I encourage the kids to tremendously brainstorm here at the beginning. They will get better at it and faster at it, and they won't have to do so much of it when it comes time for something like the milestones test. But if they have created this sense of habit in their minds as they write, then when they get to the milestones test, they will naturally brainstorm to some degree before they actually start writing their answer. So we're going to practice that right now with the passage from the city to the trail. So I have asked your presenter to have that passage available to you. I'm hoping that you can get that out now. And we've already answered the what is the prompt asking me to do and how is it asking me to do it. Remember, we are looking to see how the setting distracts the narrator from her mosquito bites, okay? As you're reading, when you get to that part, I want you to jot down a list of every possible way you can think of that the setting distracted the narrator. And you'll notice my comment here, your first idea is not always your best idea. So there are lots of ways, or several ways at least, that the narrator is distracted. And so you're going to write down all of them, and then you're going to pick the two that you think you can most easily and fully explain and use in your paper. Okay, so take a moment now, read the passage, and jot down your ideas for how the narrator was distracted. Now, actually, this is the part you just did. I had this in here in case I needed to summarize it for you, but we read it, so I don't have to do that. Now, here's a list I came up with. Your list might be very different, or it might be exactly the same, but I came up with several ideas, and then I thought about which ones I figured I could write the best explanation for, and I put those in red. And as I looked at the ones in red, I thought to myself, okay, I could say the narrator was distracted by the sound of the soaring waterfall and the look of the white foamed water. Or I could leave it a little broader in my topic sentence and just say that the narrator was distracted by the sounds and sights of the waterfall. So I went with that. And then I decided I was going to use those examples as my evidence. So you'll see here, evidence number 1. For example, in the text it states, the sound of the water grew to a roar as we got closer. So I'm giving evidence to support the fact that there was a sound that distracted the narrator, okay? But now I have to explain why this would be distracting for the narrator. So I chose to use more detail. I wrote, This was distracting because the narrator is a city girl and is not accustomed to these kinds of sounds. She's used to hearing traffic noises, not roaring waterfalls. Done with that first idea. Simple, right? Just one thing to support it, and then I have to explain it. Now, my second idea was the sights. Now I got to pick something the narrator saw about the waterfall. Furthermore, the narrator says the sights were hypnotizing. She refers to the water as white foam and the falls as a canvas of an artist. Now, I want to point out something specific here. You'll notice in my first evidence, I quoted the entire piece of evidence. In my second evidence, I paraphrased some, and I only put certain words in quotations. Make sure your students know that they do not have to use direct quotations every time. Sometimes it makes a lot more sense to completely paraphrase and not put anything in quotation marks. So I kind of like to use a rule of thumb at the beginning that one of my pieces of evidence is a direct quote and one is either fully or partially paraphrased, just so they get in the habit of practicing that. So now I have to explain why seeing this white foam and this canvas of an artist would have distracted this particular narrator. And I decided to use this shows this time. This shows, once again, that the narrator is mesmerized by the unique attributes of nature. So she's mesmerized because this is unique. This is something she hasn't seen before. Okay, so I'm connecting it back to my first piece of evidence without sounding too redundant, and of course back to my topic sentence. Then for my concluding strategy, remember I can choose to challenge the reader, I can return to my strongest point, or I can answer the question of, so what, why does all of this matter? I chose the latter, and I said, all in all, if you put a city girl in the middle of nature, the hypnotizing beauty will capture the girl's attention, not the mosquitoes. All right. Now, you might be saying, well, my kids don't write like that. That's totally fine. I'm trying to give this example can be used for multiple grade levels, and I'm trying to show you kind of the general format for it. You will see multiple examples throughout this presentation, as well as I'm uploading multiple presentations to this Google folder that I'm going to give you a link to. And within that, you'll see 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, so forth and so on, examples of how to pull this all together. Okay, let's talk a minute about this green and purple stuff. Now, I put it on the board just like this for the kids, and I asked them to tell me what do they think the purpose is for the green words, and then what do they think the purpose is for the purple words. Then I talk about what we're going to call those and why and how we use them. So of course, as you can see, the green words are transition words. I talk to students about how we don't need very many of those, and so we just need to memorize a few, use only those at the beginning, and then branch out to more as we become better writers. The purple words are sentence starters that help us get ready to say textual evidence or explanation sentences. Now, a word about transitions. You don't need very many, so know them. I suggest you put anchor charts in your room, just like this. If it's my first point, I can use for example. If I'm giving more of the same, I'll say additionally or furthermore. If I'm switching to something different, I'll say however or on the other hand. And if I'm concluding, I'll say all in all or therefore. I like this because we really want to get away from first, second, third, last. We really want to get away from in conclusion or in summary. We want to use more advanced, especially as we go up in the grades. Okay, same thought process here. You're going to want to have these posted so kids have concrete ways to start their evidence sentences and concrete ways to start their explanation sentences. These should be on the board and used frequently through your small group rotations, any kind of writing assignment, so kids just get in the habit. Okay, and then these are all in the graphic organizer that I've included. Now, what if I can't think of 2 ideas for my topic sentence? The last thing you want is for a kid to sit there staring at a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen because he or she cannot think of 2 ideas to put in the topic sentence. I tell kids, you never stop and wait. If you can only restate the question, you just do that and move on. If you can only think of 1 idea, you just do that and you move on. And if you can't think of any ideas at all, then you can start thinking about evidence you might include. Sometimes that helps you go back and think of a topic sentence. There's all these strategies. So I put 3 specific strategies here. You can skip it and go on to the evidence explanation part and then go back to write the topic sentence. I know that sounds backward to most of you, but there are kids who think that way. They'll say something along the lines of, I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. And then once he writes his evidence and explains it, even he writes his other evidence and explains it, he's like, oh, I'm basically talking about how friendship is more important than being right. And then he can write that as his topic sentence. If you only think of one idea, that's fine, but use both pieces of evidence to relate back to that one idea. And then if all else fails, at least restate the question before you move on. Is a topic sentence with two ideas always the best route? I say yes, except for these little exceptions. And a couple of them we already talked about. But if the question is compare and contrast, one set of E's compares and one set of E's contrasts. If it's asking how two articles are similar, then one set of E's is for article 1, one set of E's is for article 2. If it asks how they're different, you do it the same way. Theme can be tricky, but it's not tricky if we teach our kids what theme really means and how to break it down. I'm going to give you more on that in a moment. Okay, here's just an example you can include when a prompt is asking for what's similar. You can go with the kids and say, okay, what would the first set of E's cover? And then what would the second set of E's cover? And here, is your answer. For that one, it would be how the first article says gifts bring joy, and then how the second article says gifts bring joy. Okay, let's talk about theme for a second. Theme is a central idea to a story and is written in sentence form. Theme is not one word. Friendship, love, sacrifice, these are topics. Those are not themes. And there's a huge problem where I feel like so many kids and sometimes teachers think that topics are themes, and things like cliff notes, spark notes, they confuse us because they will say, oh, the theme is friendship or the theme is love. And that's not a theme, that's a topic. So a theme contains a topic, but turns it into something that can be applied to our lives in sentence form. For example, friendship is more important than always being right. Love conquers anger. Sacrifice leads to reward. So let's talk about how you can turn that into two ideas for your TEEEC paragraph. Well, if the theme is friendship is more important than always being right, your first EE is about when the character was insisting on being right and how that didn't work out so well. And the second EE is about when the character realized that the friendship was more important and then how that made the character happy. If your theme is love conquers anger, your first EE is about when the character was angry and how that affected him or her, and the second EE is about how love overcame that and then the character ended up happy. So now you try. If the theme was sacrifice leads to reward, how would you put that into two ideas? You might have said something like, the first EE would talk about the sacrifice the character had to make, and the second EE would talk about the reward that came as a result of it. Okay, so here's one that you could walk through with your students in order to practice this. The piano is another sample milestones passage that hopefully you have in your hands today that you can look at and use. And if you read through this, you're going to jot down ideas about what would be the theme. And so here I've done it for you. As I read through, I realized at the very beginning that change is very hard for her and makes her upset. The beginning of this passage talks about how she doesn't like change in general. Then as I continued reading, I find out that this big change that happened is making her really upset, but then she ends up happy in the end when she realizes her mom can play the piano. There's this new piano in her house that has taken over a spot that used to be where her toy chest was, and she's really upset about it, but then she ends up happy in the end. So I have to look at that evidence and say to myself, well, what life lesson can I get out of that? So I came up with this. The theme of the piano is that even though change is hard, it can bring happiness. So now I have to think of two sets of EEs. Well, if I go on our strategy before, my first set of EE will be about how change is hard, and the second set of EE will be supporting how it can actually bring happiness. Okay, so this is something fun to do with the kids when you've covered concepts such as the ones we've covered today. You can scatter these throughout your mini lessons. Which do you read first, the prompt or the passage? A lot of kids will read the passage first. They don't even know what they're looking for. So you want to make sure they're in the habit of not only reading the prompt, but dissecting it with what is the prompt asking me to do and how is it asking me to do it. What do you do if you get stuck? You never just sit there. You write what you know. If you can't write the topic sentence, you start with the evidence. If you can't think of the evidence, you go back to the topic sentence and say, what was my idea? I only need one piece of evidence to support each idea. True or false? You don't always have to use direct quotations from the text. It is okay to paraphrase. Of course, that is true. True or false? Transition words are important. My goodness, kids leave these out like crazy, especially the younger kids. So we want to emphasize that that's very important. What kind of topic sentence only has one idea stated? And this could be things like, how are the passages similar? There's only one way. You might only be talking about one way they're similar. How are they different? You might only be talking about one way they're different. If it says, or if you can't think of a second idea, then what do you do if you cannot think of a topic sentence? They would give any of those 3 strategies we discussed earlier. And then what kinds of things can the explanation sentence do? In other words, what is its purpose? And the answer there is it explains why the evidence is important. It shows how the evidence supports the topic sentence, or it gives more detail to explain the evidence further. Okay, so that takes us through, and you've got this, by the way. That takes us through the PowerPoint. Now, you might say to yourself, wow, that was way too much for the kids. Of course it is. It's definitely way too much for the kids. That's why you have this kind of big picture. And so now you get to dive in to a folder I'm going to show you for writing. So hopefully you see this now on your screen, and it is a link to a Google Drive that I am going to provide for your school. So you can go in here and look at all of this and pick what works best for you. So for example, you have beginning practice prompts. You open this up. These are the ones I was talking about to start with at the beginning. So if this were my class and this was day 1, I would show the whole entire TEEEC organizer. And we do a little song. I have motions for it that I can show you sometime at your school. But we say T, E, 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 C. And you just chant, you kind of stomp it out, right? And you make a T with your hands, and then you stomp out the E, 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 and then you put a big stop sign up with your hand when you say C. And we used to just chant it and walk around the room and chant it, depending upon what grade level, of course, that we're entertaining at the time. But I would introduce the process very quickly, 5 minutes or less. Then I would say, okay, today we're only gonna talk about the topic sentence. And then I would go through that whole explanation about how the topic sentence has the topic and then 2 ideas. And there's actually a PowerPoint just on that I'll show you next. But then you model for the students how to do it, meaning they watch you and they don't help at all. And you do number 1, what's the best restaurant in Atlanta? Okay, you're gonna do the whole, what is this question asking me to do? How is it asking me to do it? And then you're going to write the topic sentence. Then you're going to do number 2 is guided practice. Hey, let's work together to answer this one. Why is reading important? You might brainstorm a list of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reasons why reading is important. Then as a class, you will select the top 2 that you want to put in your topic sentence. But of course, before you do that, you also answer the question, what is the question asking me to do and how is it asking me to do it? Then you tell them to turn to a partner and do number 3. What do you like to do after school? Then, independently, you can ask them to answer number 4 or number 5, whichever one you think might be easier, or they can pick to answer number 4 or number 5 independently. Then you would walk around and do aggressive monitoring and see how they're doing with putting down the topic plus the 2 ideas. Okay, so all we're doing day 1 is what is the question asking me to do and how is it asking me to do it? And the topic sentence for each of these prompts. And every day you're going to use these same 4 prompts, because remember, they're picking the 4th one themselves. Day 2, you come in, and the only thing you do is you have them create evidence for each of the prompts. So you model how to do it for number 1. Together, you do it for number 2. With a partner, they do it for number 3. And independently, they do it for 4 or 5. So you're going to need multiple copies of this TEEEC graphic organizer that I showed you. Guess what happens day 3? You talk about explanation. There's a PowerPoint for explanation. okay, that's in this folder. So you will go ahead and do that for day 3. So let's start looking at some of these different things. So, so some of these, so this one right here, for example, if you see Right Score, that means it was created by Right Score, but then I adopted it to fit our TEEEC lingo so that all the vocabulary is consistent. And for example, here is how to break down a prompt. Here is a way to practice it. This is more of an essay focus because it has topic in the point of paragraph 1, the point of paragraph 2. But it has passages, it has brainstorming. So you can see you have lots of resources like that you can practice. Okay. This is the rubric I just referenced. Not rubric, I'm sorry. This is the graphic organizer. So when you on day 1, you're gonna want to have 4 of these. 1, they're not writing on it all. They're watching you write on it. Number 2, they're not writing on it. They're watching you, but they're helping you because that's guided practice. But then they'll have 1 that they write on with their partner. They can have both of their names on it. And they will have 1 that they do independently. Okay, so they can look back at all of these as the week goes on. All right, this is the rubric at the beginning. It's super simple. It's basically saying, does the paragraph have what it needs? And then you can write comments about depth of development or, you know, transition words or anything that you think needs to be added in next steps. All right, this right here is exactly kind of what I've been saying. Day 1, here's what I suggest you do. Here's a helpful PowerPoint. See topic sentence 1 through 3 PowerPoint, okay? So this gives you PowerPoints, mini lessons along the way to teach each step of TEEEC, okay? You're gonna find that in this paper here. Then if you click on, this one was a PD that I gave a couple of years ago. It has the same thing I just showed you, but as I scroll down, here's an entire mini lesson on just writing topic sentences that you can use. Okay, and then it also gives you some practice just reading a prompt and writing a topic sentence. It also has a list of transition words. Now, like I said before, I would not give every student this big old list. But if students have become very comfortable with the short list that you provided and they're ready for something more, then this is something you could share with them. Now, this is what I was talking about, bridging the gap. So remember I said, okay, we're gonna teach this, just the process. We're not gonna look at content. And we're gonna do those 4 or 5 fun prompts that I showed you. Once you've taught that, which I take 2 weeks at the beginning, especially in the lower grades. In the upper grades, we don't take that long, maybe a week. But in the lower grades, I take 2 weeks just so they really get how to do each step, especially the explanation. Explanation is something you got to spend a lot of time on. Once I've gone through that, then I start in with really short, really easy passages. And we use text, right? This is where we're quoting text and paraphrasing text to support our topic sentences. You'll notice this particular passage is, I think this one's a level J. Let's check down here. Yep, a level J. So you're talking, you know, 1st grade, 2nd grade, maybe, early 2nd grade, probably, passage. And that's it. It's just that little bit of writing right there and that little bit right there, okay? Then they move on to this one, or you don't have to go in any order, but should Matt get a cell phone, okay, a smartphone? He writes a letter to his mom asking for one, gives reasons why he should get one. She writes back and gives reasons why he shouldn't. Kids pick one to side with, and then they answer the prompt. Should he get one? Yes or no, and give 2 reasons. Should school buses have ads? Look how little this is, just this versus this. You decide which yes or no, who you agree with. Should sweets be banned from school birthday parties? So you get the picture. These are texts, they're articles, but they're highly engaging, especially for kids, and they're written by kids and for kids, okay? So those are all in here. Is cursive writing important? There's a few different ones that, that you have there to choose from. Okay, so let's go back then and see what else is here. The whole presentation from today is on here, right here, that's the TEEEC writing. And then I'll continue to add things. I do not see all of the, so right now I can add in here shortly. I will add in all of the passages I referred to. I thought they were in here, so I will make sure those are in here as well. And then if you need more passages as time goes on, you can just let me know and I can add them in. I'll also make sure all of the mini lessons that I have on teaching each component, explanation, so forth and so on, are added into this folder. So hopefully by looking through these things and looking through the PowerPoint today, you will feel like you've got this. But like I said, oh, I know what I didn't get to. So it was in this, let's go back here. When you get to the writing guide, okay, and you get to later in the deal, right here we go. All right, editing, revising. Okay, right here. What I say over and over again to teachers is this. This is the most important phase, because if you just grade my writing and give it back and I don't have to change anything, I don't even know, most likely I don't even pay attention to what I got wrong. And number two, I don't get any better at it. The only way we get better is through revising. That's the only way we get better at writing. So it'd be much more beneficial. Let's say I just turned in my paper to you. You graded it. That's fine. That grade can go in the grade book. You give it back to me. I have to correct at least one or two of the major things that I got wrong and get another grade. That can be a classwork grade, that, you know, that can be a more formative grade, but I should get a grade on correcting the things I did wrong after you've graded my paper, because that's the only way I can understand how to become better. Otherwise, I'm going to keep writing over and over again the same mistakes. I'm gonna, you know, there's a famous Winnie the Pooh quote: if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And that certainly, despite the bad grammar of the quotation, applies to writing. And so it's okay to revise the same piece 3, 4, 5 times, as long as there's something specific you're asking the kid to do. Meaning, you can't say to a kid, you need to explain your evidence. You can't say that. You have to have time with that kid to say, you need to show, you need to write an explanation for your sentence. That means you need to answer either what it shows about the topic sentence, why it's important to the topic sentence, or just give me more information about your evidence so that I can understand it better. Give them 3 choices. In other words, you have to, if a kid's not doing one piece of this correctly, you have to break it down for them and teach them. It doesn't necessarily have to be another mini lesson. It could be a small group mini lesson. I would never do a whole group mini lesson on something unless every single child in the class made the same mistake. But small group teacher-led mini lesson, one-on-one writing conference, or for some kids, it's just writing a note just like that. You are missing your explanation sentence. After each piece of evidence, be sure to answer either, why is this important? What does this show? Or give me some more detail. If they're not including transition words, you wouldn't say add transition words. That doesn't help kids. You would say add transition words such as, and then you would give them a little piece of paper that says, first, if it was their first piece of evidence, for example. If it's more of the same, additionally. If it's something different, however. If it's the conclusion, all in all. Okay, you see my point? You're giving them very specific strategies to correct where they went wrong. So make sure that you spend some quality time on revising. All right, so I will, like I said, upload everything. If you have specific questions or want more information on anything at all, please feel free to reach out to me. You can get my email and my phone number from your coordinator or from any of your school administrators. And I look forward to hearing how this is going and hopefully coming in to see it as well. Thank you.